So today I want to talk about heaven, and the reason why I want to talk about heaven is because I find that the cure of this darkened, evil world is definitely 100% heaven and focusing on it. Okay, and so Revelation 21, verses 1 and 2. It talks about the New Jerusalem coming down from heaven. Does that mean we actually physically see it? I would hope so. I mean, does that say something about the rapture? Do we go into the air to meet it halfway? Outside of the fact we're probably not going to know the answer to these things, which is not my point in the video, because I'm not going to give you the answer because I don't know. As saints of God, people who are struggling with being torn out of this world. And that's what it kind of reminds me of if I really focus on it in just a kind of physical way, if I could describe it with something that you have done in your life and you totally understand. If you have a bush, a thicket, and you have a wool sweater that is wet, and you go and you take that sweater and you push it into the thicket, and you kind of get it all mixed up in the thicket, and then you try to rip this sweater out of this thorn bush, this wet sweater out of the thorn bush. The pain it would take to pull out this sweater is the same pain of sanctification, just spiritually. There is something about the soul and the flesh that absolutely need to be ripped in two, but you can totally see this to be accurate in this reality. So you're looking at top officials, generals, very logical people, not spiritual people at all, who are now in the Israel generals and top officials. And they're looking around and they're actually saying things in interviews like, there's a battle here. And not only is it, to help protect the West and the Western concepts and ideas, but it's also a battle of good and evil, of light and darkness. That's very spiritual sounding stuff. And they're all kind of coming out saying something along those lines where you're kind of getting the gist that they're looking around in a mad world. The world has gone completely bonkers. The world itself has become the thorn bush. When you have all these surrounding countries from around Israel. This is my example because this is how crazy it is. If you were to put them all together, they'd have a handful of Jewish people between them. And these are huge countries. And some of those countries border countries that have no Jewish people. So we're talking tons and tons of land, lots of acres, lots of desert, lots of cities and towns that don't hold Jewish people. But the place in the center of it all, Israel, happens to hold Jewish people, Muslim people, Arab people. Who's the oppressor? This is like David and Goliath type stuff. And so it's one thing to have those countries who are crazy. I think Saudi Arabia is coming around, the king or the prince. There's these things where he's going publicly about, I'm worried about my life because of my connection to Israel. Anyhow, most of these countries are just, they're enemies of Israel. But to see the world, like all these major, what you would think to be, was it 2020 that did something? Was it the pandemic? Was it people who are extroverted being locked in their house and they just went crazy? Is it the vax? What did it? Something happened. But this is definitely a thorn bush now. And ain't nobody trying to get ripped out of it except for the Christians. The reason why I'm starting with this, the reason why I think this is really important, is because things are going to get worse and worse. The fact that there's logical people who are looking around going, what is happening? Why is the whole world anti-Semitic? Because I promise you, it is spiritual. I promise you, there's no logic to this. It's only going to get worse and worse and worse. I've been saying this for 4 years. This is not, it's not like you need to be a prophet or anything. That's what the world does. It just gets worse over time. The fact it went this way, and I just kind of knew, like tonight, it cemented it for me because I want to rant about political things. But I really had to pull back. There are people who are paid to be representatives of the American people, who are paid to care about us, to be a voice who's connected to these big wigs who've decided to abandon us and then to get in their feelings and to be a bunch of teenagers. And this ABC host. She was interviewing J.D. Vance, and it could have been Kamala, it could have been anybody. And all of her questions were so pointed and so not caring about what the American people cared about. You knew she was paid with fat pockets to sit there and ream and just go on about Trump and how much Trump sucks and this and that. Meanwhile, people are really suffering and nobody seems to care. Nobody cares. And the fact that she said, oh, people did rescue people in South Carolina. It's like, you're not even representing us now. You don't care what people think now. Everybody around me doesn't have the money for the food. They don't have the money for the kids. And she doesn't care. She's an elitist. There's them and there's us. I had to realize that's part of the darkening of this world, just like the generals over there in Israel going, oh my gosh, this is like light and darkness. There's something happening. There's a separation. You can literally see those who are comfortable in the thorn bush and the people who have become sharp and rigid edged and the people who are softening up to be released. And you just have to say, stay soft. Don't let your heart get hardened. Don't let these pharaohs and these elitists who are paid to maintain the status quo, who don't know the reason why there's a shaking, is because something's happening that they'll never ever understand or grasp without the Holy Spirit. They'll never get it. And so instead of making this political, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really solve a lot of problems, it just makes more people angry. It's just like with Obama coming out and shaming people who happen to look like him. If you're in Christ, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to say because you look this way, you have to vote this way. Like people think with the skin color. Like I'm sure there are parts of our country that of course suffer severe racism, and I get that. But that's the most racist thing you can do, is say because you look a certain way, of course you'd vote a certain way. That's extremely racist. Instead of looking at that going, this is Democrat, Republican, you have to look at it and go, this is the world waking up to going, wait a minute, what's happening? Where am I? Just like J.D. Vance, when Martha asked him, said something about the Venezuelan people, taking over only a few apartment complexes. Those weren't her apartment complexes. So she doesn't care. She doesn't care if it's 2. She doesn't care if it's 5. She doesn't care if it's a dozen. She doesn't care because those are not hers. She has walls around her house. She's got security around her house. You're not her. She does not care about you. Obama wants to get paid. He wants to keep his pockets. He wants to keep his image. And he's going to use it to bash you because he is not you. There's the elite and there's us. And that means us, white, black, Hispanic, and there's them, and they all are in the same boat, regardless of their race, and it's a joke on us. We're the butt of the joke. So once you realize that it's just sport and it's a game, you can't get caught up in it because that's how the game is played. As soon as we get divided, that's how they get united. That's how there's order out of chaos. Then you got to sit back and start focusing on how small this place is and how big what's coming is. There is a question that I'm leaning on for this video. This is the question that I'm leaning on. And it was in a Mike Winger video. He does a Q&A of 10 questions. And one of them was, why did God create us? And why did God allow for this, pain to happen, knowing that Eve and Adam were going to eat from the tree? First of all, the Bible never says how long Adam and Eve were chilling in heaven before they made the mistake. They could have been in there for a few eternities before they ate from that tree. How long will it take? And that's what I'm noticing with sin. Sin will just sit there and wait for you to take a bite. It will take, sometimes it's a few months. So sometimes it's a long time for some people. Sometimes it's a few hours. Sometimes a few years. Being married for 50 years, I'm sure there's temptation that sat there and they had to wait that full 50 years and they had to be loyal. And so that's number one. So a lot of people give Adam and Eve a hard time, but we know from eating from that tree on a daily basis, we would not survive what they went through. We wouldn't have fared better because they were kind of like toddlers, whereas we have a little bit more knowledge. They were actually without knowledge. That's part of what the tree gave them. Anyhow, my point being, why did God create this reality knowing there would be so much pain? The reason why is because this reality is a blip on the screen compared to the forever that comes after this. That's why God allowed this to happen. It was a really good answer from Mike Winger, because it's something I do forget. He knows that the pain and the suffering now is so small compared to the glory that will come. And in my last video, I did a Bible verse on that. And so if we really want this world to really be shaken, you got to get comfortable allowing those who are the prickles to be more prickly and to be more uncomfortable. And and the more uncomfortable they get, they're gonna lash at you more. They're gonna be angry. They're gonna try to pull you down more. They're gonna try to pull you in more, because remember, we're like wet wool inside of a thorn bush. So this is the thorn bush getting more prickly, trying to keep you. So don't let the politics keep you. Don't give it the time of day. You just have to acknowledge they're getting angry and they're getting obvious about how elitist they are, and they're getting out those clubs and they're looking around at people that look like them and telling them, you better get in line, like a pharaoh, because they believe themselves to have the power to do so. I mean, look at the people at the border. They're a Mexican cartel selling Mexican children. They do not care. When slavery happened, black people sold black people first before they came over here. Does anybody want to take responsibility for that over there in Africa? No, nobody. Because it's a human condition. We can get up in the politics of who did what, but really at the end of the day, it's a human condition. Mexican people will sell Mexican people. Black people will sell black people. Obama's done it. I saw him the other day trying to sell people who look like him downriver. You better vote the way I say because you look like me. There's something extremely evil. There's just so... Anyway, they're going to get more obvious about how rude they are, how evil and mean they are, because the prickles are coming out on them. It's just gonna show, just like Hollywood, the teeth are showing. The beasts are gonna start, pulling off the mask and start revealing the ugly that they are. You have to get comfortable with that, right? That's number one. Number two is to focus on heaven. One of the things I wanted to talk about today was some of my meditation upon heaven. Like when I had been there for a little bit, it's a vague memory, but the ground was lit from within. The trees were lit from within. The air was like perfume. You know how you put stuff around your house to make your house smell good? That's how the air was everywhere. And it was unique and nostalgic. Like if you literally could take nostalgia and put it in a form and smell it on a breeze, that's what it was there. It was just nostalgia everywhere. And it's almost like when you have those really big moments in life, I compare it to the American Beauty scene at the end where he says, oh my gosh, wow. That's what it is when you're in heaven. You're always feeling this very deep feeling of wholeness and completeness. And in heaven, there's no time. So when you get hot food, your food is hot. Now, I didn't eat there, but I know how time works. It means that our food won't spoil. When you're in heaven, I don't think you'll have refrigerators. And you won't, because nothing will spoil. When you're in heaven, the lion and the bear and the snake, all these things will be friendly. Like you go to the zoo in order to see the lions and the bears. They'll be there. There'll be just a living zoo everywhere. Just like Jurassic Park or something, except without the things attacking you. And the oneness comes from knowing yourself and what he created you to be, that others can see on you physically, out externally, and knowing that he is the one that branded that on you, that he created you from your personality. He knit your personality from inside the womb, and then your external person. When you really focus on that, and if we all focused on that, I do believe, just like I said in my last video about frequencies and about focus and consciousness, the occult love to push the negative, evil stuff on us on purpose, because they understand the power of the consciousness, and they understand that we somehow create a reality around us. If we were to really put our focus on heaven coming down to earth and not getting so offended by the people who are becoming more and more scaly, and while we're trying to pull away, I mean, it's painful, it's not easy. I think things could change. I do. I think that we could become a society who looks at each other and no longer needs this racial stuff. Wouldn't it be nice if we could put down our guard? I remember that too, feeling that in heaven when I spoke or had any type of communication, which I don't remember speaking. it didn't feel like I had to be guarded. Like people understood what you were saying. They understood your intention. You didn't have to phrase things in a way that made it go, oh, well, the way you phrased that made me think that subconsciously you're telling me that you don't like me or something. People do that, or there's a Freudian slip. That's not how it is in heaven. And so if you focus on that oneness, you focus on humanity that doesn't need these, elitists holding themselves up and beating us over the head to do the right thing by them in order to maintain their power while they don't care about us. If we focus on what we want to happen, which is the return of Jesus Christ, and a unity among us, a place where there's no hurricanes, a place where there's no chaos, I believe that even just focusing on that, even if the world is getting darker, talking about it and encouraging each other with that will help bring you to a place emotionally to be content in all things, because this is a blip on the screen. This is just passing by. This is not forever. It'll be like a nightmare upon awakening, and then you'll forget about it. This is Linda of Christ is King forever. May God be with you.